Or Ikagai?
I love guys.
we have that question for you. What is your Ikigai? So some of you are probably staring at us going,
WTF.
WTF. What is Ikigai? All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, but of course, we're doing another Queer Money follow-up. This is for episode 42 of the Queer Money podcast, which was talking to your partner about money, which is a constant subject that we seem to be talking about on not only the Queer Money podcast, but these follow-ups, because it's something that we regularly get questions from our community, whether it's in the Queer Money Facebook group, it's Queer Money podcast listeners, people emailing us directly. And actually, it was a question from a listener specifically that made us do this specific episode 42. And it was a question from Dale. Dale says, I have no debt and a good credit score. My partner has $16,000 in debt and has a poor credit score. I tried helping him because it's really holding us back. He said specifically, it is holding us back. And he's had no luck in trying to help his partner. We live together. They aren't married. Was asking for some advice.
It's very interesting. I see a common theme. It's not unique to same-sex couples, but lots of couples struggle to get on the same page financially.
Right.
And I wonder, it's very perplexing to me, right? We have no problem, talking about our sexual preferences, even with complete strangers, but we have trouble getting on the same page with money with our partners.
Yeah. And
that very often, unfortunately, that results in or manifests in debt.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Various kinds.
Well, and so when we were talking about this, or when we did this episode, we were talking about there's a lot of reasons for debt, right? I mean, there's for some people, I know for us, well, I'll talk about us in a minute. I mean, for some people today, especially, I think of right now with COVID and all of the people who have either been furloughed or laid off, or their income is just significantly down. We live one block off of Fremont Street in Las Vegas, and we live in an area where there are a lot of restaurants and businesses that rely on tourism, and those individuals who work there rely on tips. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them have talked about how there's this huge fluctuation in their tips. And so one of the reasons why people go into debt is because of income insecurity, either low income or no income, and they have to pay for their necessities, right? They need to be able to keep the lights on. They need to be able to put food on the table. And if you were making income in the past and now you're not, all of a sudden
things have changed.
You're right.
And at this point, despite what Dave Ramsey says, we're a year into this pandemic. Nobody ever advised anybody to have 12 to 13 to 16 months worth of emergency savings.
Exactly.
It's just unrealistic.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. The next major reason why folks get into debt is because of emergencies, right? So you have a medical emergency or something happens with your car. Those kinds of emergencies oftentimes trigger folks to be able to going out and using credit cards or debt in some manner to cover those emergencies. I think it was the Atlantic article in 2018
I think it was 18.
That said 47% of Americans could not
households.
47% of American households could not cover a $400 expense or emergency without having to borrow money to be able to cover that, which is just that means that
right. They literally didn't have the cash, so they would have to use credit cards, go out and get some other kind of bank financed loan, or reach out to friends and family for help.
Right. But we have worked with hundreds of people who are in debt, and what we have found, the number one reason why folks are in debt, and this is most likely the case with Dale and his partner, it's overspending. The vast majority of folks just overspend. They spend more money than they make, and majority of the time that spending is not on necessities. I would say personally, from what we have found, 95% of the time when people are in credit card debt, it is because they're spending on non-necessity things that they don't necessarily have the money. They don't have the money for, or they pay for those things and then they run out of money for their utilities or other things, and those all of a sudden those necessities have to they use their cash for the non-important things, and all of a sudden they have to use their credit to pay for the important things.
Right.
So this whole discussion about debt and partners not being able to get on the same page financially kind of triggered this question in us and made us think about Ikigai. And we wanted to ask that question: what is your Ikigai? Because
it's not a gross guy.
Yeah. Ikigai is something very interesting. It is a Japanese word, right?
It's from the Japanese culture, and roughly translated, it means a purpose for living.
A reason
for living, purpose for living. And what we found with a lot of folks when we go through our coaching program is that many of them haven't actually had this particular discussion of what is it I really want in life. And this is the challenge that you and I had with our $51,000 in credit card debt. We didn't really know what we wanted. So we were spending on all sorts of things to mask our insecurity, to make up for pain, to try to fit in with certain crowds or communities. And that wasn't really fueling our soul. It wasn't inspiring us. It wasn't making us truly happy. It would provide us brief glimpses of happiness. But as we're learning from some studying that we're doing, you reach that point of hedonic adaptation where that special thing is no longer special anymore.
Right.
And so it's almost like you're in a sense, in a materialistic consumer tangible way, you're sort of chasing a dragon, right? Those shoes were fabulous a month ago, but they're no longer fabulous anymore. So I need a new pair of shoes. Right. Or I forgot about that. That vacation was a year ago. It doesn't really seem special anymore. I need to go on another vacation. And so you're constantly searching for more and more things by consuming more and more stuff, more and more tangible things. And essentially that's not providing you, and that will never provide you happiness, long-term happiness, until you figure out what it is your reason for living is.
Right. So there are 4 pieces to Ikigai. And it's interesting when you look at these 4 pieces, you can kind of see why it makes sense that this gives you a reason for living. So the 4 pieces are love, or what you love to do. Not love as in a relationship, but what you personally love to do. So is there a hobby or something that you really enjoy doing that brings you satisfaction, right? That's the first piece there. The second thing is what you're good at or your skills, right? So you may love knitting, but you know nothing about knitting, right?
Unless you knit Bernie Sanders mittens.
Right, exactly. So when there's an overlap between what you love and what you're good at, then there's something called passion. You actually can do this. You have some passion around it. On the flip side of that, there's what the world needs, right? So not everybody in the world needs mittens. So
I argue that.
Right. Well, if you live in Africa or you live in Las Vegas, very rarely will somebody in Las Vegas need mittens, right? But what the world needs means that there's a desire or that other people would appreciate if you provided it.
There's a demand.
Right. There's a demand, right? So we oftentimes see this, the overlap of what you love to do and what the world need oftentimes overlaps in mission. And that is, we see people like Mother Teresa, right? Going out and helping the poor. Or you see people who work in LGBT centers. They help folks with their basic needs, or sometimes very significant real needs in life. And that's where you can have a mission in life. But I think that the one that many of us struggle with or find a hard time with is actually finding something that we're good at, that we have that we love, that we have the good skills to do, that the world needs, and we can actually make some money off of it, right? When you can make some money off of what you do, that allows you to sustain your life. So there's these 4 pieces here are very interesting, because basically what the Japanese culture found was that when you satisfy all 4 of those to varying degrees, but if you can satisfy all 4 of those, then you have a true reason for living. And I think a lot of us we can find overlap in a couple of those, but we don't necessarily find overlap in all of them. And one of the things that John and I have discovered and see happening a lot with queer folks is that there's this huge desire to provide for the needs of others or help others, but then there isn't the overlap with making money. And so there's a lot of people out there that want to help others, but they themselves end up being in a financially precarious situation, which means that they struggle with other aspects of their lives. And we know that you don't have a great life when you struggle in other aspects of your lives. There seems to be almost a
martyrdom.
Yeah, a martyrdom, right? In the queer community where people feel like you're a hero if you're fucking broke, but you're helping others, right? I would venture to say that the person who is fucking broke and helping others doesn't often feel like their life is in a great place, right?
Yeah, they're struggling. I mean, we've done a lot of studies on financial insecurity, and while it's cathartic and you have that esoteric feeling of helping others, and you should definitely help others when you can, there's no nobility in being broke and doing it in the process. At the end of the day, Mother Teresa had some backing from the Roman Catholic Church. She wasn't, she knew where she was going to rest her head at night. She knew where she was going to get her food. That wasn't a concern for her. She was being subsidized in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of us, we've noticed, we oftentimes see people who want to start a business, and they're more concerned about donating to and giving to the community,
right?
Long before they even have any revenue, let alone profit, to be able to give to the community. And so they're looking for crowdfunding to be able to help subsidize their business. And a large component of their business, their for-profit business, is giving to people. Well, it's almost like you're putting the cart before the horse, right? You kind of have to have the income and you need the profit if you want to stay open, so that you can then have money to give to people long term. It's that whole concept of putting your mask on first before you put on the mask of the person next to you. You can't adequately help somebody else if you're suffocating yourself.
Right. So what does all of this have to do with debt? What is this Ikagai? What is these 4 areas of what you love to do, having the skills to be able to do them, providing for the needs of the world, or providing for a need that the world has and making money off of it? What does that have to do with getting into debt? And Dale's question about his husband, or not his husband, his partner, not being able to pay his debt off and getting on the same page financially. Well, as we said earlier, that the primary reason 95% of people get into debt is because they're spending money they don't have on things that they don't necessarily need. And that typically is because that debt is a symptom of something else. Right?
Very often.
More often than not, that debt is a symptom of spending on things to satisfy something inside of us, right? We see this all the time. We talked about an example of someone we worked with for a short time period whose husband didn't work but demanded that he get was it Louis Vuitton bags?
Yeah, he required Louis Vuitton bags.
Right. So here he was, not working, letting his husband go to work and work overtime so that they had enough money, but demanded that they would have Louis Vuitton, that he had Louis Vuitton bags. And geez,
can't say it.
Right. And
bad gay.
It's that right there, clearly there's a symptom. What was he trying to overcome? And oftentimes that symptom is that our spending doesn't align with our values. And we've talked about this in the previous 2 Queer Money follow-ups, 40 and 41, about aligning your spending and your values. Most of us, when we go into debt, are trying to find happiness. We're spending to try to get the happiness that Ikagai, having those 4 components in our life, would satisfy, right? So John and I have done some work on this, and we understand this not only because of what we did ourselves, getting into $51,000 in credit card debt, paying that debt off, and then helping lots of other people go through the process of paying their debt off. We've helped people pay off over $400,000 in credit card debt in the last 2 years. Actually, I think that number is higher because we've recently had a couple of people tell us significant amounts that they've paid off. We found that there are basically 5 building blocks to, especially gay men, but queer people, 5 building blocks to having a happier life. And they tie into that whole thing with Ikigai.
Right. The 5 building blocks, as we've discovered in our own work and that we do between each other and that with other couples, is love, money, wellness, and lifestyle are the 4 pillars, and they all work together. And there's broad definitions of each of those. Love is taking care of your neighbor, as well as finding sexual
somebody
relationship
that you love.
Exactly. Money is financial security, as we talked about when we talked about the Venn diagram version of Ikigai. Wellness and lifestyle. But then the foundation of all of that is what we've decided learned is direction and purpose. We need to have purpose, which is synonymous with Ikigai, which is synonymous with a reason for living. And then you need to have direction to be able to fulfill that purpose. And that's sort of the foundation of everything. You have that direction and purpose, and then lifestyle, wellness, money, and love. And those are all the 5 building blocks that make up a happy gay life.
And John popped up the image there of what we are giving away for free is a tool that we have created that helps you understand those 5 building blocks a little bit more. It helps you kind of, in a more westernized way, move some of those Ikigai principles into your own life, especially for gay men. We focus on this gay men because that's our story, right? We're 2 gay men, and we are trying to encourage gay men especially to start having these kind of more meaningful, deeper conversations. It's more than just the kinds of conversations that we have over cocktails or over mimosas at brunch, the kinds of conversations that actually help us find love, find what need we can fulfill in the world, find the skills, find a job that allows us to do all of that and make enough money to live off of.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us for another Queer Money Follow-Up. Here is your Queer Money Follow-Up takeaway from this particular episode. Please download your free copy of the 5 building blocks of a happy gay life at debtfreeguys.com/5. And then let us know in the comments below, especially based on the discussion we just had, if you know what your Ikigai is. And if you do know what it is, we would love to hear it and see what you all are thinking.
I think you probably know what ours is, right? Ours clearly is helping the queer community live fabulously, not fabulously broke.
Exactly. And then join us tomorrow for episode 43 of the Queer Money Podcast follow-up series, where we cover episode 43 of the Queer Money Podcast, and we talk about how to attract more money, which fulfills one of those components of a happy gay life. Yeah. Lastly, thank you for joining us. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and set notifications on this channel so you can join us for future conversations. Thank you, and we will see you tomorrow.